On the morning Eleanor Hart met Julian Cross, the city was holding its breath. Rain hovered in the air without falling. Clouds hung low like unspoken thoughts, and the streets glistened faintly as though remembering a storm that had passed in the night. Eleanor noticed these things because she noticed everything. She had learned over the years that the smallest details often carried the deepest truths. She was standing outside Hawthorne & Co. Publishing, clutching a leather folder to her chest, her heart beating fast enough to make her dizzy. At 26, Eleanor had already tasted disappointment more times than success, but hope, fragile and stubborn, still lived inside her. Today was her interview for an editorial assistant position, a role she had dreamed about since she first fell in love with words. Julian arrived late. Not fashionably late, not dramatically late, just late enough to disrupt the quiet rhythm of the morning. He emerged from a black cab with an apologetic smile, rain finally beginning to fall as if summoned by his presence. Eleanor noticed him only because he nearly collided with her while fumbling for his umbrella. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice warm, slightly breathless. "It's okay," Eleanor replied automatically, stepping back. Their eyes met for a brief second, an ordinary moment by all reasonable measures, yet something subtle shifted, like a page turning in a book neither of them knew they were reading. Julian was taller than she expected, with dark hair that refused to be tamed, and eyes the color of old paper, soft brown, worn by thought. He looked like someone who lived among ideas rather than people. Eleanor, in contrast, carried a quiet composure, her features gentle but resolute, her eyes observant and guarded. They exchanged polite smiles, then turned away, each assuming this fleeting encounter would dissolve into nothing. They were wrong. Chapter 2: Ink and Silence. Eleanor got the job. She found out 2 days later when an email appeared in her inbox with the subject line, "Welcome to Hawthorne & Co." Her hands shook as she read it, a laugh escaping her lips. She had done it. She was stepping into the world she had imagined for herself since childhood. What she did not know, what no one had told her, was that Julian Cross worked there too. He was a senior editor, renowned for his discerning eye and ruthless honesty. Authors respected him, feared him, and trusted him in equal measure. He had a reputation for brilliance and solitude, for staying late and speaking little, for letting manuscripts matter more than people. Their second meeting happened in the hallway. Eleanor was carrying a stack of manuscripts nearly as tall as her torso when she turned a corner too quickly and collided with a solid presence. Papers exploded into the air like startled birds. "I am so sorry," Eleanor gasped, dropping to her knees to gather the pages. Julian knelt too, his movements calm and efficient. As they reached for the same page, their fingers brushed. Eleanor felt a strange warmth at the contact and quickly withdrew her hand. "It seems we keep doing this," Julian said lightly. She looked up, recognition dawning. "You're the man from outside, the rain." "And you're the woman with the determined expression," he replied, a hint of amusement in his eyes. They shared a smile, longer this time, more deliberate. From that day forward, their paths intertwined quietly. Eleanor assisted Julian often, learning his preferences, anticipating his needs. He liked black coffee, margins neat, arguments precise. He noticed her attention to detail, the way she annotated texts with thoughtful questions rather than corrections. They spoke about books at first, then about authors, then about life. But always there was a space between them, measured, careful, as though both were afraid of crossing an invisible line. Julian had loved once before. It was not something he talked about, not something anyone at the office knew. Love, for him, had been a language he once spoke fluently and then forgot after it betrayed him. Years ago, he had built a future with someone who walked away without explanation, leaving behind questions that never found answers. Since then, Julian had learned to be careful. He kept people at a distance, wrapped his emotions in discipline and routine. Eleanor disrupted that balance in ways he did not expect. She listened, not just politely, but deeply. When he spoke, she heard what he meant, not just what he said. When he fell silent, she did not rush to fill the space. Instead, she respected it, as though she understood that silence could be its own kind of language. Eleanor, too, carried her own history. She had grown up believing love was something fragile, easily broken by harsh words and unmet expectations. Her parents' marriage taught her that affection without understanding could turn into quiet resentment. She wanted love, but only if it was honest, patient, and kind. Julian felt safe. That frightened her. One evening, long after the office had emptied, Eleanor found Julian still at his desk, red pen in hand, brow furrowed in concentration. "You should go home," she said softly. "So should you," he replied without looking up. She hesitated, then smiled. Fair point. Neither moved. After a moment, Julian leaned back in his chair. "Would you like to get coffee?" The question was simple, but its weight pressed against Eleanor's chest. "Yes," she said. The cafe was small and warm, tucked between a bookstore and a florist. Outside, the rain fell steadily, tracing silver lines down the windows. They talked for hours about childhood memories, favorite sentences, fears they rarely named. Julian told her about his past. Eleanor listened. When he finished, she did not offer platitudes or advice. She simply said, "Thank you for trusting me." Something in Julian's chest loosened. Love did not arrive suddenly. It unfolded, in shared glances across conference tables, in quiet laughter over badly written manuscripts, in the way Julian always saved Eleanor the last chocolate biscuit from the break room, in the way Eleanor remembered his deadlines better than he did. They did not define what was happening between them. They let it exist without naming it, like a melody playing softly in the background of their lives. Until one night, Julian walked Eleanor home. They stopped outside her apartment building, the city humming around them. For a long moment, neither spoke. "Eleanor," Julian said, his voice unsteady, "I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hung between them, fragile and brave. Eleanor swallowed, her heart racing. "I know," she said softly. "I think I already have." He leaned forward, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their first kiss was gentle, reverent, as though they were afraid of breaking something sacred. Loving Julian was not dramatic. It was deliberate. It meant understanding his need for solitude and his fear of loss. It meant mornings filled with quiet companionship rather than constant conversation. It meant disagreements handled with care, not cruelty. Julian loved Eleanor with equal intention. He showed up, he listened, he chose her every day. They learned each other's rhythms, their flaws, their fears. Love became less about feeling and more about commitment, about the daily choice to remain kind. When the offer came for Julian to move abroad for a prestigious position, it felt like a test neither of them had prepared for. "I don't want to leave you," Julian said. "I don't want you to stay out of fear," Eleanor replied. They argued. They cried. They sat in silence. In the end, Julian declined the offer, not because Eleanor asked him to, but because he realized that love, once found, was rarer than ambition. Years passed. They built a life filled with books, laughter, and quiet evenings. Love deepened, matured, rooted itself in shared history. One autumn morning, Julian proposed, not with grandeur, but with sincerity. "Will you continue choosing me?" he asked. "Yes," Eleanor replied. "Always." Epilogue: A life written together. Love, Eleanor learned, was not a sudden blaze, but a steady flame. It did not shout. It stayed. And in the quiet spaces between words, in the pauses between heartbeats, Eleanor and Julian found a love that endured, written not just in ink, but in trust, patience, and time. The end.